of David Goergens, Hearts Touched with Fire. Overview. We live in a time of great uncertainty. With every new crisis we face, it becomes more and more clear that we desperately need fresh minds to guide us. In Hearts Touched with Fire, 2022, David Goergens, who has been an advisor to 4 U.S. presidents, details the qualities of great leadership and what the rising generation of leaders must do to achieve it. Using examples of legendary leaders, Goergens offers a complete guide to effective leadership. The Hero's Journey. The United States is facing one of its most difficult periods since its founding. We live in a time of immense volatility, with crises hitting us from all directions. It is increasingly clear that we need an infusion of strong, fresh minds to help us navigate safely. There is hope for the future if we can learn from our history and prepare younger generations for lives of service and leadership. In today's rapidly changing environment, leaders must be endlessly attentive and adaptive, actively engaging with followers and collaborators. To safely navigate challenges, leaders must steer by a moral compass. If we look at history, most great leaders were idealists who were committed to a higher truth. They stuck to their course, unwilling to compromise their values and vision no matter how brutal reality became. The development of a leader can be divided into 2 parts. First comes the inner journey, which is the internal work potential leaders must undertake to identify their values and the way they are shaped by the hardships they must overcome. In this part of the journey, they develop both self-awareness and self-mastery. The second part is the outer journey, which takes place when rising leaders transition into contact with the outside world. It is when they learn to build relationships with others on their team and outside their immediate circle. Once leaders have accomplished internal mastery and encountered the outer world, they must be ready for action. Leaders do not become great by studying under a lamp, but by getting their hands dirty, trying, stumbling, getting up again, and pushing forward, especially in times of crisis. Self-awareness. Leadership starts from within. It is important to discover for yourself who you are, what you believe in, and what dreams you have for the future. Before you can lead others, you first need to learn how to lead yourself. A clear understanding of yourself is the foundation upon which to build an integrated life. To become self-aware, you need to learn what your strengths and weaknesses are. Ask yourself some questions to learn some basic things about yourself. How do you learn? Are you a reader or a listener? Teddy Roosevelt was a voracious reader, which helped him become a much better president. Ronald Reagan, however, was a listener. He would absorb oral briefings, but he would only read briefing papers that were a page or so. To stuff him with facts and minutiae was a waste of everyone's time. It is important to know how your boss learns, but it is even more important to know how you learn. What side of the introvert-extrovert spectrum are you on? Historically, introverts have been seen as less effective at leadership than extroverts. In 2012, Susan Cain wrote a popular book sharply disagreeing. In Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking, Cain, an introvert herself, challenges the belief that a leader's ideal self is sociable and comfortable in the spotlight. That tradition, she argued, is a mistaken belief from the Greco-Roman world that men of action are better leaders than men of contemplation. It is an insightful book for introverts as they venture forth. As for the majority of us who lie somewhere between the 2 poles, understanding each personality type can help us succeed and play to our strengths. How do you respond to stress? Young, emerging leaders need education and training, but you will only truly know who the leader is during a crisis. The leader is the person who charges toward danger in a crisis. Overcoming your fears and getting your hands dirty is indispensable if you want to lead. Self-mastery. Self-awareness is the foundation of your journey, but the secret to long-term success is to build upon self-understanding to achieve self-mastery. Before you can persuade others to follow, you must focus on building up your strengths, relentlessly improving your performance, and conquering your weaknesses. You should start by transforming your strong area into super strong before fixing your weak area. While it's important to overcome weaknesses that are disabling, employers are usually most impressed if you have one or two super strengths. Employers generally don't hire people who could perform well in any aspect of work. They hire those who provide expertise on one specific set of goals or responsibilities. Always striving for improvement helps you climb to the top. Greatness comes through patience, discipline, and practice. Top performers are not born with innate talent and do not effortlessly float to the top. They work incredibly hard to improve their talent. However, how hard you practice is not a predictor of success. It is how effectively you practice that makes you successful. To achieve world-class excellence, you must practice deliberately. Your practice should constantly improve your performance. Never become complacent with your goals. Set a distant target, but know you will often fall short. Challenge yourself to fail, then practice in productive ways that correct your errors. Smart practice enables you to read a context better and quicker than others. A top quarterback is extraordinary at making split-second decisions. When his jet lost power shortly after takeoff, Captain Chesley Burnett Sully Sullenberger, calm and well-trained, pulled off the miracle on the Hudson, safely landing 155 passengers and crew members. Years of deliberate practice made him extraordinary. The first mountain you have to climb as a young, developing leader is the one inside you. Become self-aware, and then deliberately work toward self-mastery. Your gathering years. The journey through young adulthood is often called the coming-of-age years or the gathering years. Whatever the label, scholars agree that our experiences between leaving the nest and taking full flight are among the most formative, passionate, and adventuresome in life. Much depends on how wisely we embrace them. Self-awareness and self-mastery are necessary to complete your journey toward leadership, but they alone are not sufficient. To realize the great promise of young adulthood, you must cast your net more widely. You need to find mentors, sponsors, and role models who will open your eyes and possibly open doors. You need to sort out your values and principles, and ultimately you must create your own moral compass, your true north. As you sort out your career path and learn how to succeed in the job market, it's important to be open to new opportunities, adaptable, persistent, passionate, and willing to take risks. Here is some career advice for those in their 20s or 30s today, living in a rapidly changing and unpredictable world. Take timeouts. Students who take timeouts from the standard academic track often grow more fully than their peers. So try to explore a variety of short-term options, like going abroad, signing up for a summer research project, taking an internship, working in a soup kitchen or homeless shelter, volunteering to work on climate change, or exploring a commitment to a service organization for a year or two. The possibilities are endless. Choose jobs that align with your passions and values. Work with passion on a cause that matters to you. Finding out what you like to do and what gives you meaning will lead you to the right jobs, even when you aren't looking for them. It is far easier to excel in a position aligned with your passions and values than in a role that brings prestige but conflicts with your inner purpose. Perform every task with excellence. You must learn how to follow well before you can lead well. Humility is your friend, arrogance is your enemy. Learn to give your all to every task, no matter how small. Look for stretch jobs. It is important to find work that demands more of you than you have ever imagined. By doing this, you will develop not only your humility, but also a quiet self-confidence that you can handle anything thrown at you. You will inevitably fail, but it is from this stumbling that we grow both personally and professionally. When your learning curve flattens out, start looking for a new job in which you can continue to grow. Your gathering years should be your growing years. Spot those with high promise and join forces. Develop a good eye to find promising people. They can become your friends for life and important members of your personal network. Accept that you will make big mistakes early on. Make your mistakes early in life, dust yourself off, and go forth with better judgment. Build a safety net. It is important to have a plan B in case you lose your job, with enough money to tide you over and a network of friends who can help you. Set aside enough money to help you walk away from an awful boss or a worse marriage in order to keep your path to freedom and dignity open. Find mentors and role models. Mentors and role models have always been central to the development of young leaders. For instance, when Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and other progressive women were elected in 2018, Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal took them under her wing and helped propel them into lives of promise and power. They are now transforming politics. Another example is legendary basketball coach Patricia Summitt. Her legacy lies with the generations of women she coached and mentored, making them better athletes and leaders. Summitt demanded excellence from her players on and off the court. As great mentors often do, Summitt fostered a desire among her players to do their own mentoring. 62 women who played for her went on to coach basketball teams or hold administrative roles at the high school, college, or professional level. Mentors provide a voice of wise, balanced judgment and spark the ambitions of their mentees. They help their mentees avoid blind spots. Find a mentor, and don't forget to become one for others when you reach the top. Although you should study the lives and lessons of role models, don't try to copy them. Be yourself, don't try to be someone else. Listen to your inner voice. Great leaders are a source of inspiration. They can prompt you to look inward and begin developing the timeless qualities we see in the best of humankind. The knowledge you learn from them in young adulthood, along with your own experiences, will provide the basis for forming your values and discovering your true north. Pin down your core values and principles. Everyone has their own set of values that they live by. There are many values that people hold, and it is not possible to live by all of them, as values often conflict with each other. For example, after finishing college, you may be presented with two options: an entry-level position at a top-tier technology company or the opportunity to start up a business of your own. Would you go with prestige or take the risk? Emerging leaders need to take time out of each day for personal reflection or meditation to sort out what their core values are. After finding your values, you need to translate them into principles. If your core value is equality of opportunity, then your principle can be equal pay for equal work. If your value is to set an example for others, your principle should be to always take the first hit as a leader. The years of young adulthood are an ideal time to sort out what values and principles you want to embrace in life. Construct your moral compass. The best leaders are those who stand for something bigger than themselves. Leadership should emphasize system change, teamwork, emotional intelligence, openness, and authenticity. To navigate challenging decisions, leaders must rely on their own moral compass. It is easy to honor your values when life is going well. But when a crisis strikes and tough calls are needed, you must be able to decide which values are most important, which must be sacrificed, and what trade-offs may be required. As Steve Jobs said, don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. To be authentic, a leader should be transparent and open to others, comfortable disclosing vulnerabilities, and consistently honest. When things are going well, a leader should be collaborative, creating round tables where all voices are heard. But when an emergency strikes, the team leader must put on the cloak of command, making decisions in rapid-fire order. A leader must also adapt and adjust as the needs of followers change. Authenticity in leadership does not mean that every thought or emotion must be expressed. Instead, it demands that leaders stay true to their values and principles while being nimble in their leadership. There is a difference between steadiness and rigidity. In your mind and your behavior, you must hold steady your long-term destination. But as contexts change, you must adjust your tactics. Surviving hardships. Part of the human experience is encountering acute suffering at one point or another. Whether it's the result of personal tragedy or a national crisis, these events can allow us to reshape our vision of ourselves and the world. These events are commonly called crucibles in leadership literature. Against all odds and logic, a terrible crucible experience can foster considerable development, increased ambition, and enhanced leadership abilities. Maya Angelou, one of America's greatest writers and poets, faced countless hardships, including the hatred of racists and the trauma of rape, back when no one talked about such issues. However, her spirit was equal to the test as she wrote, "You may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them." The capacity to derive meaning and learn from adversity is one of the most accurate markers of great leadership. Extraordinary leaders possess the qualities necessary to not only overcome adversity, but also to come out on the other side, stronger and more dedicated than ever. The crucible experience can take many forms, including childhood trauma, the sudden loss of a loved one, racial prejudice, or near-death experiences like that of Serena Williams, who almost died after giving birth to her child. Malala Yousafzai is another example of someone who has faced multiple crucibles in her life, including being shot by the Taliban. She has persisted in advocating for girls' education all across the world, despite her challenges. Undergoing such a devastating experience is not an actual necessity for leaders, but for those who do have them, such encounters can change their entire journey as a person and a leader. Turning adversity into purpose. Great public leaders who were knocked down repeatedly have rebounded and grown stronger, acquiring a new moral purpose in their lives. Philosophers, religious figures, poets, and historians have long urged humankind to adopt purposes beyond those of the individual. There is a critical difference between a personal purpose and a moral purpose that inspires people to pursue service, activism, and politics. For example, after experiencing discrimination and witnessing the hardship felt by his community, Harvey Milk committed himself to advocating for those who were rarely seen in elected office. In 1977, he became the first openly gay person to win a major elected office in the United States. When people embrace moral purpose as their ultimate concern, it gives them fresh energy and satisfaction when they reach their goals, and it gives them persistence when they run into obstacles. Every leader must embark on an inner journey. History repeatedly suggests that leadership starts from within, so until you can master your inner self, you cannot serve others. The development of character, the capacity to snap back and grow from a crucible moment, and the embrace of moral purpose are the essentials that allow a leader to exercise the moral courage to do what is right. Without them, the odds that a leader will speak conscience to power and risk career and accolades for the sake of advancing humanity's needs are significantly lower. For moral purpose and moral courage to count, though, and to make an impact, leaders also need to face another set of challenges that equip them with the ability to persuade and inspire. They must set off on an outer journey where they learn how to build a following, how to execute, and through patience and persistence, achieve the central purpose that motivates them. Learning to lead. Management skills are a foundation upon which leadership is imagined and built. As you embark on your outer journey, you need to learn how to manage not only yourself but your boss, your colleagues, your team, and even your outside collaborators. There is an art to managing up, sideways, and down, especially when done at the same time. To lead is to effectively organize and interact with those with whom you work, understand the priorities and goals of your colleagues, and see that those goals are put into action. Managing your boss entails playing to your boss's strengths and helping them navigate and succeed as a leader. For instance, A smart staff member should always be aware of looming problems and plan ahead to avoid them. Donald Trump might have been much more successful if he had directed his team early on to investigate the possible effects of a pandemic. His chief of staff was just as responsible as Trump himself for a massive failure of leadership. A good staff member should speak conscience to power. Good leaders now push responsibility deeper into the ranks. Top leaders remain responsible for developing strategies, but they empower leaders 1 or 2 tiers below to execute. This is why leaders up and down the ranks must be transparent and candid with one another to avoid surprises and a lack of trust. It's important to know bad news and act on it before it reaches the media. The hardest challenge for a boss is to have a clear, honest reading of team members. Usually, the person who plays that role is the executive assistant to the boss. The range of responsibilities for any top assistant can be massive. They need to be the chief diplomat for the boss, reaching out to colleagues beyond the inner circle, and keeping them informed about the morale, moods, anger swings, and perspectives of the leader in the front office. If there's no steady flow of reliable information, members of the team may feel distant and distrustful. Rumors can spread, and morale can deteriorate. Learn to serve as good eyes and a chief diplomat to manage your boss. Leading your team. Leadership studies have historically focused on lone, heroic individuals, but this is changing. Leaders are now often embedded in teams, and their success depends on how well they collaborate with others. The rise of organizations like Black Lives Matter has taught us that teams are as important as individuals in shaping our future. Today, it is a leader's duty to recruit and empower members of a good team to get big things done. A team flourishes when personal responsibilities are well defined, the team has an efficient process for decision-making, there is a compelling purpose, and the team members have expert coaching. The leader's prime role is to ensure that these conditions are in place in order to build a good team. To turn this good team into a great one, organizers need to not only put into place management rules and structures that enable the team to excel, but also the leaders themselves need to share high aspirations, have keen imaginations, and be able to work well with others to spark great performances. Former Stanford professor Jim Collins became a guru on building great teams in the 1990s, and his research showed that quality individual leaders are central to the success of a great organization. The most influential advice in his 2001 book, Good to Great, was not about management structure, but about the connectivity of people on a team. His advice was that leaders need to get the right people on the bus, the right people in the right seats, and the wrong people off the bus. Every organization depends heavily upon the capacity of its leadership to recruit and empower top talent, assign them the right responsibilities, and let go of the people who hinder the team. Finding your voice. Public persuasion is an important part of democracy and can be a source of unity. The American experience has been defined by the rhetorical leadership of men and women who have stepped forward during crucial moments and inspired others to take the high road. For example, X. Gonzalez's emotional speech at the March for Our Lives in 2018 awakened the nation to the gun violence epidemic, and it serves as a reminder that words and ideas can mobilize a public following. Your voice is your passion in life. It is what gives meaning to you deep inside. Your voice is most effective when what you believe and say stirs a resonant chord within people. Finding your voice usually comes from living life for a while, sifting through your experiences, and beginning to understand yourself. Sometimes, that self-understanding comes from a crisis in your life or the world beyond. In the 1960s and 1970s, many young Americans found their voices in the controversies raging over civil rights, women's rights, Vietnam, and the environmental movement. Many today find their voices over the systemic inequalities facing us. But for most, finding your voice comes with time as you develop your interior life and reflect upon it. Begin by noticing events and issues around you that strike a resonant chord. Speak up when you believe in something or when you oppose what is going on in the world around you. Be conscious of what is true to you and your values. Then you will discover your true inner voice. When leaders lose their way. When leaders face challenging decisions and great responsibility, the most successful ones are those who have a supportive team, a clear set of goals, and the ability to adapt. Leadership in the public arena can be one of the noblest and most fulfilling experiences you can undertake. But it also comes with temptations that have repeatedly been the undoing of leaders who lose their way, abandoning their true north and often self-destructing. Some successful and highly paid leaders can't tell when enough is enough. They persist in chasing money and prestige when they already have more toys and properties than they could ever enjoy. The tens of millions of dollars they accumulate before retiring are not enough compared to their peers' billions. This is why you need to get your values straight during your inner journey. Because if you don't find your true north and commit yourself to a high moral purpose in life, you can easily descend into darkness. Catholic popes and their followers have wrestled with questions about which sins are the most deadly. Over time they have identified 7: pride, greed, lust, anger, gluttony, envy, and sloth. The best way to counter these sins is not to hate them, but to love virtue more. Embracing the virtues diminishes the possibility of personal derailment. In that spirit, here are 7 deadly sins of leadership and an offsetting virtue for each. Hubris versus humility. The number one danger in leadership is that success will go to your head and you will become arrogant, leading to your own self-destruction. In ancient Rome, a victorious general would return to the city for a celebratory parade. On his chariot, standing right behind him, a slave boy would continuously whisper into the general's ear, "Remember, you are mortal." This is because the one answer to hubris is humility. Narcissism versus empathy. It was said that Teddy Roosevelt wanted to be the child at every christening, the groom at every wedding, and the deceased at every funeral. However, he was still an excellent president because he loved others and had enormous empathy for those who lived on the margins. As a leader, you must keep your ego under control and remember that it is not about you. Greed versus modesty. Many leaders who grew up with modest means often want a more secure financial base. While some become greedy, many others are driven by their meager lives to make the world a more supportive place. Former Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz, for example, grew up with a deliveryman father who broke his ankle in an accident and lost his job. Memories of those days inspired Schultz to ensure that baristas at his Starbucks have health insurance and an array of other benefits. Our economic system has created inequities that demand correction, but billionaires can be part of the solution. Obstinacy versus resolution. Strength and decisiveness are great qualities for a leader. However, if a leader carries a strength too far, it can turn into a weakness. Resolution carried on too long in the face of growing arguments can turn into obstinacy and become the undoing of leaders. Imprudence versus wise judgment. Good judgment is essential for good leadership, and it comes from a blend of experience, mistakes, study, and reflection. Our culture celebrates leaders who are bold and willing to take risks, but there is a fine line between smart and rash. Basic dishonesty versus straight shooting. The Trump years should dispel all doubts about whether honesty still matters in public life. Chronic lying hardly started with Trump, but he took it to levels never witnessed before in the White House. The Washington Post kept a record of Trump's lies and deceptions. He had been untruthful on 30,573 occasions while in office. Honesty and transparency are 2 of your best tools for building trust and a connection with the public. Sometimes a leader must lie for the sake of national security. However, when lies become chronic, as they did with Trump, nothing that a leader says can be accepted at face value. Trump was smart enough to keep his base loyal to him. But he lost his power to persuade others, derailed by his own hand. Distrust versus openness. In a democracy, trust and openness must run in both directions between leaders and followers. Followers must trust their leaders to tell them hard truths, while leaders must trust that followers will believe in them. That being said, almost every leader has had to be tough and use the low arts of leadership, as Alexander Hamilton called them. This is the paradox of American politics. We want our leaders to be caring and compassionate when they should be, but also tough, deceitful, and cunning when they need to be. So when should principled leaders resort to the low arts, and how should they defend themselves from others seeking to drag them down? There is no easy answer, and much depends on context. But as a rule of thumb, the low arts should be employed only when they serve the legitimate needs of an organization, not the aggrandizement of the leader. We live in an age of cacophony, surrounded by cries of despair and a hunger for power. Leadership today requires a hard head, along with a soft heart. The leaders who serve us best will be those who are steadfast in pursuing their true north, but also keep a club in the closet. Leading through a crisis. The acronym VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Our VUCA world is one in which leaders must always be prepared to deal with challenges just over the horizon. Character, courage, integrity, moral purpose, vision, adaptability, grit, and persuasion are all important qualities for a leader, regardless of the circumstances. However, during times of crisis, there are 4 other qualities essential for effective leadership. Carelessness of self. Among the leaders we most admire, we so often find this sentiment today. They put the lives of others first, showing a great carelessness of self. For example, firefighters and police officers, knowing they would likely die, climbed up the stairs of the World Trade Center on 9/11 while civilians were climbing down. Prudent judgment. A prudent leader must be informed by experience and have a curiosity about the world, a sense of responsibility for the team, and the patience and perseverance to see it through hard times. Fingerspitzengefühl. This is a German word that means fingertips feel. It refers to a person's instinctive feelings. In English, it might be thought of as situational awareness. Those who possess it often have a feel for how events are likely to unfold, and can prepare themselves early. Some leaders are born with it, but more often it builds up through extensive experience in the public arena, refining a leader's sense of social dynamics and capacity to anticipate. Coolness under fire. Staying cool and steady in times of crisis is a prime requirement for leadership. Leaders lend strength to their followers in times of crisis. These are the basic qualities that make a leader, and the ones that are required during a crisis, but there are other qualities that receive too little attention in leadership literature. These are the booster qualities that often mark the difference between a good leader and a first-class one. Leaders who have a keen curiosity and a love of history often have better judgment. Those who have an abiding sense of humor, often laughing at themselves, can create a warmth that connects them to others. And finally, leaders who seek an integrated life, aligning their values and aspirations for both work and family, can achieve an inner calm that serves them well during storms. Answering the call. America is now facing an existential threat to the Republic. Pessimism runs high, and public intellectuals forecast the demise of our democracy and the rise of an authoritarian state. However, in recent years, resistance movements led by the young have mobilized the largest crowds in history in favor of the environment, women's rights, and gun control. So it is way too early to give up on democracy. Rather, we should urgently look for ways to encourage the young to embrace lives of service and leadership. One might expect millennials and Gen Zers to be reluctant warriors in the struggle to revive our civic life, as they have been repeatedly battered by crises. However, there are growing signs that they are starting to answer the call with a vengeance. Rising young leaders like Greta Thunberg have channeled hard times into hope, living their lives with a sense of idealism that can propel us to better days. Many young people today appear to be seeking a life of service over one of grievance. They see today's world as an opportunity for action, and they are responding to setbacks in much the same way that great leaders from the past responded to crucibles. They momentarily fall flat, but through their resilience many bounce back. And in the best cases they emerge stronger than ever, embracing a life of fresh moral purpose. The rising generation of leaders still has a long way to go. Leadership is hard, grueling, and often thankless work, as critics fire their poisonous arrows at you. And the higher you climb, the tougher it gets. But this should not make you retreat. Rather, it should encourage you to toughen up. You will need a true north by which to steer, and an outer strength to help you overcome obstacles. You will find that the harder your journey, the greater the satisfaction you will enjoy upon completing it. It takes patience and fortitude to be an effective leader. The world needs new, strong leaders who have found their true north and are capable of handling the crises that are coming. We need strong-willed idealists who will stand up to those who stand in the way of making our society more giving and fair. About the author. David Gergen served as a White House advisor during the administrations of Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, Ronald Reagan, and Bill Clinton, and he recounts those days in his New York Times bestseller Eyewitness to Power, 2000. After that, he became editor-at-large at U.S. News and World Report, and then a commentator on PBS's MacNeil-Lehrer Report. He is currently a senior political analyst for CNN and a professor of public service at the Harvard Kennedy School. We hope you enjoyed summary of David Gergen's Hearts Touched with Fire. Purchase the book to learn more.